Alright guys, so this eddy current brake showed up at our shop and we have to rip it apart, figure out what's wrong with it, and repair it. So this is a Stromag 175 foot-pound 100 volt DC eddy current brake. So the first thing I want to do is take this pecker head cover off and do a mega ohm test. So we're testing our insulation resistance to ground. I don't see a ground issue. The next thing I want to check is the actual resistance of the magnetic coil. 7 ohms, it kind of seems really low. I'm not really comfortable to energize this thing with that low resistance reading, so we're just going to go ahead and start taking it apart. Once we've got that rotating drum off the outside, we can kind of see our coil that's tucked underneath all these little pull teeth here. So we're going to pull those 4 hex head fasteners off of there, and we're going to try to get these 2 pieces to separate so we can gain access to that coil. Now that we've got that separated, we can visually see the coil, and you can see it's been subject to some overheating. Now, being that this is a DC coil, we want to duplicate this exactly the best that we can. So we need to take all these dimensions, the ID, the OD, the thickness, we need to recreate it, we need to make it the same size, it needs to have the same amount of turns using the same gauge wire. Luckily for me, I have wound one of these identical units, so I do not have to count this one because I already know what is in there. So even though we have quite a few projects going on at the moment, I was able to knock this coil out pretty quickly because we're in the middle of rewinding this 700 horsepower electric motor, which we were able to get done fairly quickly, but we are still waiting on parts for that. Now we need to make sure that this coil fits back where we took it off from. One thing about copper is you can't really stretch it, so if it doesn't fit, if it's too small, you're going to need to make another one. Now we're going to go through and replace some of our mechanical parts, our bearings and things like that. You can see the coil sitting down in between the 2 halves. It looks like it's changed a bit in color. That's because it's been dipped in a varnish and baked in an oven to harden and cure that coil. This unit has 2 bearings inside of it, a couple different snap rings, and once we've got all of those pieces back into play, we can go ahead and do a couple tests with it. So we'll give it a couple good spins with our hand, and I do have a little DC power supply that we can energize, and we can watch it stop. So an eddy brake is a fancy way of saying that this is used to slow down a moving object by using eddy currents to dissipate its kinetic energy. Now, magnetic flux doesn't like to move through air, so you can see how fine that air gap is. It's a really tight tolerance on that. So now that we've verified that all of this works, we can go ahead and paint it, package it, and send it on an hour and 45-minute trip back to the customer. Cheers, guys.